going over to the defensive side of the ball, they lose their top two tacklers from a year ago, one of those being linebacker Jackson Stratton. What can you tell us about the linebacker group from the spring?
I think it's actually much improved. I think Jackson he ends up going back to UNA, North Alabama FCS school. That's actually in his hometown of Muscle Shoals, well, Florence, Muscle Shoals, Shoals area. Shout out Fame Studios, Rolling Stones, Leonard Skinner, all that. But anyways, I think he might have been just a bit too slow in what they were trying to lose. He was a bigger guy, but maybe a little bit slow as far as lateral movement. They had a guy, Everett Russaw, who's a true freshman last year. He's much bigger, much faster, and he's much more glued into the system, what they were doing. But he's a guy who came out last year, ended up starting a few games. So he's in there in the middle. And Michael Moore, who was originally kind of an outside linebacker, edge rusher top, they moved him inside last year near the end of the season with Jackson, maybe, showing that he wasn't maybe had the ability to play within Sione's system on defense. But, Michael Moore being there with Everett Russaw, that's a very dangerous middle linebacker combo. And I think that's going to be your two main guys, your two starters in the mid and the inside. And you got a lot of other guys who've got some talent. They brought in some junior college transfers. They brought in some portal transfers. So I think the linebackers have definitely been upgraded since last year.
Kind of reading between the lines in that answer there, you talked about true freshman linebacker Everett Russaw. And he did. He certainly had an impressive debut for a true freshman, 50 tackles, a sack, a fumble recovery. I'm assuming we can expect his role to increase, and he's probably the guy kind of taking over that middle linebacker role where Stratton was last year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to kind of be their guy, probably making the calls more so than Michael, although that Michael will probably make plenty as well because they're going to use two middle linebackers most times. Michael's just a big guy, but he's also got the speed to move laterally within that system. So I think you're going to see Michael Moore and Everett Rousseau, both those guys, be the primary alphas in the middle. Probably Everett Rousseau will probably be more the play caller just because he's a young guy. He's going to understand that system. It's very fresh to him rather than Michael, who's been through, who learned a lot from the previous staff. So, it's going to be a little bit harder for older guys to really, comprehend a full system. But I think Everett's really got that down. I think him and Michael were just going to be a very dangerous duo for them in the middle.
How did the Purdue transfer Octavius Brothers look in the spring, and what kind of role do you think he might have in 24?
I think he's going to end up having a pretty good one. I mean, he's a redshirt senior. Yeah, he's redshirt senior. So he's got his 1 year. I think he's going to be a guy they use quite a bit. He'll be kind of rotated in there along with Russo and Michael Moore. Of course, he might end up playing some outside as well. These are some positions they're going to just rotate a little bit, especially in the fall when they get to a little bit more experimentation. Along with him, you had Ezra Odenjor come in. They've kind of placed him as an edge rusher, not really a true linebacker, but more of an edge rusher of the spring. So a lot of this talent they brought in the linebacker position is just it's created a lot of more depth for them than they had last year.
So you talked about there a little bit of Ezra Odenjor. He is a Georgia Tech transfer. How did he look this spring, and what do you think? How do you think he's going to be used here?
I think he'll be able to get into the rotation. You got guys like Emmanuel Waller. Let's see, Emmanuel Waller. Obviously, you got some other guys in there. James Smart, Talon McNichols, some other linebackers. But primarily that outside linebacker position, they're edge rushers. I think Odenjor is going to do really well in there. You got Kendall Johnson as well. He's kind of more of a Sam, and I think Emmanuel Waller will be more of a Sam end, whereas the edge rushers are going to be more of that, the outside linebacker kind of position. But that's where I think Odenjor is going to kind of fill into there, along with Tyler Thomas, Desmond Little, a former LSU transfer as well. So I think that pass rushing, and that's what they really wanted, was more of a pass rush from that defensive line, and you're getting that from that edge rusher and that Sam end, along with a very, concise defensive, interior defensive line as well. But Odenjor, I think he'll be into that rotation on the edge, along with, like I said, Tyler Thomas and Desmond Little.
So with a lot of teams, the importance is the line, whether it's offense and or defensive line. This defensive line returns just about everybody from a year ago. How did they look this spring? And did anyone stand out?
Much improved. You look at Ladarius Cox. He's an Indiana transfer. He really stood out. Kevin Penn was able to take care of a COVID waiver, and he comes back for a final season. He had his best year last year, and he's going to be that big defensive tackle they have in the middle. He's going to be that kind of run stuffer because he is probably their biggest defensive lineman. Obviously, they do lose Fish McWilliams, who was a guy who'd been on that line for many years, but I think Kevin Penn returning was just huge for them as far as experience and leadership. But bringing in Ladarius Cox, he's got plenty of experience, helps out. And you got a lot of other younger guys, McQuan Merriweather, just a lot of the guys they got last year, and maybe a few guys from this year because they've went heavy on the defensive line the last couple of years, which is something we've really seen in some of the more successful programs. Honestly, you could look back maybe about 15 years ago, following the Johnny Manziel beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. You look at Nick Saban in the next recruiting cycle, he had 8 to 10 defensive linemen because he could see it right there that you're gonna, with the offense is becoming so much more high octane, that he knew he was going to have that many defensive linemen. So that's kind of become standard now. 15 years later, that's just a very standard thing in recruiting, is getting that many defensive linemen because you're going to need that freshness rotating almost every single down.
Going to the defensive backfield, their other leading tackler from a year ago, safety Keandre Swoops, graduated, which kind of leaves a big hole back there. How did that group look this spring, and did anyone kind of step up to fill his role?
Well, I think Chris Bracey, AJ Brown, some young guys they've had last year, I think they can kind of step in that position. They brought in some portal guys, Rod Bryant, Adrian Maddox. I think those are some guys who are going to help in the very back end, along with Royal and Ray Thurton the third. But the kind of that star position where Keandre played at, well, definitely going to need someone. I'm pretty sure. I think Chris Bracey would probably be the one to kind of take up that position, but it's going to be a lot of different guys playing and seeing how they kind of mold within that secondary, because they got some experience, but they also brought in some new guys. So I think it's a very interesting position group to see. Maybe not the strongest, but it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of grow together, get chemistry, especially in that back end, having to play in a conference that's got a lot of passing offenses, along with a couple of historically option teams that are going a little bit more higher octane on the offense. So I think you're just going to look and see that that's just going to continue along on that trend.
You mentioned Sherrod Bryant coming over from Georgia Tech. You kind of see him more as like the center field, the guy in center field playing that deeper free safety.
Yeah, I think that's kind of going to be his role, along with Ray Thornton. I think those two guys are going to kind of share that spot a little bit. Like I said, I mentioned, you got to rotate guys in on defense now. It's just something. So there's no so much maybe glamour to being a starter, because you're going to play if you're in that second position. You're going to have to be on the field quite a bit. So I think Sherrod and Ray Thornton kind of share that. You look at Ike Roel on the other side at strong safety, probably with Maddox a little bit. And we'll kind of see how Chris Bracey and AJ Brown kind of fit into that mold, whether they kind of play that star position or if they kind of go in the back end and maybe they bring Sherrod down a little bit. So it's going to see more. So we'll see more how they kind of use those guys in fall camp, because I think maybe in spring they're just more so going a lot of the schematics of what they're wanting to do. But I think we'll kind of see who's really playing those spots in the fall.
If you had to pick a defensive player to have kind of their breakout season here in 2024, who would that be?
I'd go with Emmanuel Waller. He was a kid, a true freshman last year. He got in a few games, so he was able to get the red shirt rule and retain that year of eligibility. But in the spring, he was he grew quite a bit, added a lot more muscle to his frame. He was already a pretty big guy. 6'4". He had about 15 pounds. He's 265, so 6'4", 265. In a Sam in position. I mean, he was screaming off the edge during spring. I think he had about 2 or 3 sacks on Zeno in the spring game by himself. So this is a guy who's got the engine. He's young. He's got the hunger in him. So I think this is a guy you're going to see as kind of their breakout guy, especially in that front seven.
So he's that guy that's kind of making it happen. There's some sacks that happen that it's more of a product of everybody else kind of doing stuff, but you think he's going to be that guy creating them?
Yeah, he was creating a lot in the spring game himself, as well as just regular practices. But this is a guy, his engine is just so high running. He's a local guy too. He is very much committed to UAB. When he made the commitment, so he's very much likes to call himself the hometown hero. So this is it means something to him to play for UAB. And so I think that's just, kind of goes into already his abilities, just that hunger to succeed. has really opened up this springtime because, like I said, he really is creating those sacks for that defense instead of just kind of coming in with the chaos. He's creating a lot of the chaos himself.